So this past February, Nike sued StockX, and they're alleging that StockX was selling unauthorized NFTs of its sneakers. Nike argues the digital assets were likely to cause customer confusion with Nike, who also began offering NFTs later that month, right? So StockX first responded to these claims in March of 2022. StockX says that they were using NFTs to authenticate physical shoes to not sell them as standalone products, and that Nike was trying to interfere with its sneaker sales. Well, Nike, craziest thing here is that they bought four pairs of sneakers from StockX, and they're alleging that the four pairs that they bought were counterfeited, and they all had verified authentic tags on them. One pair which matched a StockX NFT. So now Nike's asking the court to let it at a counterfeiting claim against StockX, as well as a claim that the platform falsely advertised its authentication process. And this is big because we've seen this in the past with StockX, right? There was that huge debacle with the revenge storms. For those who don't know, they're basically just these vans with like lightning bolts on the side. And they were these, they had a few pairs of the revenge storms, but the main one, I think, was the main culprit. It was like the red ones with like the white thunderbolts, right? Or lightning strike on the side. And those, like, the fakes were so good they were basically one-to-one replicas, like completely indistinguishable, because they're just fucking vans with a thunderbolt on the side. Like, they're not that intricate of a design, or they're not that hard to copy, right, for counterfeiters. But Nike is saying that they used StockX's service. They bought four pairs of sneakers from them, and that all four were fake. Like, what the fuck? Where do you think this is going? Do you think Nike has grounds in this lawsuit? Like, how does this affect StockX? We know Dan Gilbert, the founder and, the current head honcho, for lack of a better term, at StockX. You know that's been his big pet project. They've created so many jobs in Detroit, right? They're the main player in Detroit. They've got a lot of employees. They've been building the company. They've been scaling. And now they're being hit with these different lawsuits. Do you think this affects their validity? Do you think consumers will look at these platforms differently, like StockX or Goat, or, I don't know, fucking, you mentioned Stadium Goods and Flight Club. Like, I know those are more brick and mortar consignments and not really any of these bid-ask reselling platforms. But how do you see like these reselling platforms? Like, where do you see them going with this Nike lawsuit? Like, does this negatively affect StockX, the consumer trust in StockX, and does it affect platforms like Goat or any other reselling platform?
No, I do believe that, a few fakes, slip through once in a while, but I believe the vast majority of shoes that come through like StockX and Goat are authentic and such. But I think Nike was just going to purchase as many shoes as possible until they received, the four fake counterfeit merchandise that they did, because I think the NFT market is it's a big marketplace for Nike, and if they're able to eliminate like StockX from the field, and they make their own, Nike NFTs and such, then they don't even have to. They don't even have to sell the or create the merchandise. Say there's supply chain constraints. They just create the NFT for the shoe in January, and then they release the shoe in December. They have everyone pay in January, and then they don't have to deliver the shoe until December, or maybe they don't even have to deliver the shoe at all. Maybe people just keep trading the NFT back and forth that Nike created, and they get a commission each time. Nike gets a commission each time, 10% from the sale, and they basically recapture much of the resale market of Nikes and Air Jordans. And the resale market of like Nikes and Air Jordans is probably much bigger than the first time sale of Nikes and Air Jordans in and of itself. So I believe that Nike has a big incentive to basically come down on StockX, come down on these platforms that are trying to get into the NFT space, because this is a big market share that Nike can grab from these platforms, and basically control the original sale and then any future sales of the shoe as well, which they don't control any future sales right now, any kind of resales, and that's a lot of money that they're getting up. Meanwhile, they're the creator of the shoe. I can see where they're coming from. They're the creator of the shoe. They created this brand, right? They should capture some of the upside on any kind of resale action.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I'm with you. I think a lot of it kind of is just sour grapes, right? Like Nike sees that they're making Dior Air Jordans, right? And they're selling for like 5 or 6 grand over the fucking MSRP, or like Nike will come out with the Grateful Dead pairs that came out. Remember that? That was big. That was like 2 years ago or 3 years ago at this point. Like those go for thousands now. Like Nike, there's no way Nike looks at that and they're just totally fine. They're like, oh yeah, these $250 MSRP like sneakers go for 3 grand. Like we don't give a fuck. Like there's no way. Nike definitely does not like that they're not recapturing that value. And then the main thing that you're seeing them do, obviously, and this is obviously a large portion of this due to inflation, but you see them like raising the price on a lot of these like general release sneakers and limited sneakers, and it's really not even putting a damper on like the reselling market, right? Like those Dior Jordans that came out, like let's say the high top, Dior Jordan ones, those retailed at like what, $1,000 or some shit, or like 1,500, and they go for like 6 or 7 grand anyway. So like, did it matter that they retailed at 1,000? Like, yeah, Nike is probably hyped. They were probably hyped when that happened when they released them because they got $1,000 or whatever fucking amount for them. But the reselling market is like 7 or 8 grand. So I feel like at some point, if Nike just keeps raising prices, like it's just gonna push a lot of times. Like it'll just push the reselling market like even higher.
Right, that's a good point. They've been like raising their MSRP in hopes that they're going to capture much of the resale value, but all they're really doing is pushing the resale value higher, and they're kind of like upset that they're not capturing this value. But if you look at like this market is huge. You look at like say a Nike or an Air Jordan pretty much comes out every Saturday or every week, so that's 52 weeks in a year, right? They usually produce between like say I would say between 300 and 500,000 shoes for a general release. So let's just take 400,000 as an average. 400,000, right? Times I would say the retail price for an average Air Jordan is I think it's like $190. So that's 76 million, right? And then the shoes usually like resale when they come out. Like this is an average shoe. This is not a Dior or a Grateful Dead or a Travis Scott or any kind of like collab off white or something like that. This is just a normal Air Jordan shoe, a one, a two, a one, a five, 11, or whatever. Usually they sell for at least $250, and you buy it from 190. So 250 minus 190 is $60 profit. You times that by 400,000 each week times 52. They're losing, right? $1,248,000,000 in potential net income that Nike's losing off of this resale market. Now that's if there's one sale of the potential shoe. These shoes they flip hands 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. So this could be like a $5 billion market each year, and then they take 10% of it, 500 million in net income, and then you give like a PE of say like 20 to it. This would add like $10 billion to Nike's market cap. So they're not going to just sit there and fucking and just wait and pick their nose and let these other people capture their market share and the brand that they made. They want to capture this market share, increase their share price for their shareholders, and increase the market capitalization of their company.
100% totally makes sense. And if you even look at what Nike does with a lot of like not the general release, but like the super limited shit, like all of the like hype shit that everyone knows is going to go for a lot of money in the reselling market. Nike does that sneakers app, right? And then they do like exclusive releases through them only. So now they're starting to cut out the middlemen. They're starting to cut out like a Finish Line or like a Foot Locker or Foot Action, any of those clowns. Like they're starting to cut them out finally for like all the hype shit, and they're just releasing it on their own, right? Wasn't that like basically the reason they created the sneakers app and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. They should have cut them out a long time ago. They any kind of like shoe that sells out and that's rare and such, like say I don't know, any Air Jordan 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all these Air Jordans that before I would say 14, that's after Michael Jordan stopped playing. Like any of these Air Jordans, they should just sell them on Nike.com or on sneakers. There's no reason why they should wholesale to say a Finish Line or a Foot Locker, and they're getting less money because they're wholesaling it to them, so they're not getting the full retail price. And there's no reason to do that because they're selling out. Why are you wholesaling something that you could just sell out on your own? The demand's obviously there.
Yeah, especially a pair like the this past year they had, or this past December really, they had the Air Jordan 11s, and it was the cool grays, I think. And the funny thing is, like, they do an 11 release every year, usually in December. That's kind of been like the trend for a while, right? But like the 11s, they always end up fucking selling out. And then you look at the premium based on what the retail value was when they came out, or like what the MSRP was, and it's always like a 50 to 60% premium. So like in the case of that, like why the fuck do you even sell them the Finish Line or Foot Locker or Foot Action? Like you know that that's going to be, in terms of general release at least, that's going to be your biggest release for the year. Like why aren't you doing it exclusively through sneakers or through some exclusive platform where you're going to, you know, reap most of the profit, and you're not going to be able to deal, or excuse me, you're not going to have to deal with any sort of you know, like bozo middleman. Like what, instead of, and you could raise prices too, because if you know it's going to sell out, right? Like if you know that the cool grays realistically will see anywhere from a 50 to 100% premium on MSRP, then why don't you just release it yourself, cut those bozos out, and charge like 250 a pair? Like I just don't understand it. Just do it with the biggest GR release, have general release, and then do all this limit shit too. I don't get it. Let them get the scraps. Who gives a shit, you know?
Well, the other thing you have to look at too is, you know, they provide the counterpoint of why you would want to wholesale it to these companies like Foot Locker, Finish Line, and such like that.
Well,
They
because
built
then
out.
it's with the inventory if it doesn't fucking sell and you made your money.
Well, no, look at it like this, right? If you like sell, if you wholesale to these companies and they have like a store or brand infrastructure all across the country, it's kind of free advertising. People come into Finish Line, Foot Locker, and such. They see the shoe on the wall, so like you're paying, you would have to pay less to get your brand out there and to advertise.
That's true. And if you're Nike, though, another main thing is that, you know, yeah, you're profiting less, but then you don't have as much money tied up in inventory, right? Because the whole thing with inventory is like you're, you know, you're spending like labor to make these sneakers. You're spending, you know, materials like, you know, there's a lot of shipping costs with stuff like this, and it adds up. It gets expensive. But like in selling it to Finish Line, it's not really your problem if it doesn't fucking sell at Finish Line. Like if you dump a release, especially if you're a powerhouse like Nike, if you have a shit release and you're like, all right, Finish Line, like you could buy all of them, you're just like, woohoo, we got paid. Now to reinvest that money into R&D and to, you know, maybe signing some more athletes to represent our brand, maybe to make like a new shoe or a new design of like classic silhouette of a shoe. And then, you know, that's really going to go towards making more money, that, you know, any of the like net proceeds from the sale of like a, you know, maybe like a lower end release that will end up in Finish Line or Foot Locker or whatever other fucking place. So I think that's a good reason why you want to keep them around. I'm not saying to like entirely get rid of Finish Line, Foot Locker, or any of those guys. But what I'm saying is that I think Nike should focus more on releasing their exclusive shoes directly through themselves rather than deal with any of these kind of third party bozos. And it also seems like if you remember, like this is years ago now I'm talking about. Do you remember like the Galaxy Foam Posits when those came out? I think that was like the biggest sort of the last kind of biggest like limited release that Nike did, where they did it through like a Finish Line or like a Foot Locker, and there were like major problems with that. Like I think in Orlando during All-Star Weekend, like people got like fucking killed for them and shit like that, and there's a lot of weird shit going on with that, right?
Yeah, you used to be able to like camp out for shoes and, you know, like sit outside a store and wait, and then after like the Galaxies and the Concord 11s and around, I don't think it was like 2011, 2012, you know, people were getting trampled, people were getting stomped on, and you know, Nike kind of went away from that. That's kind of the reason why they came out with the Sneakers Act, the Sneakers app in general, is because people were dying and being trampled on for for these limited shoes. And you know, there's no reason for people to camp out. And first of all, these people, they need to get a job. It's fucking embarrassing. They're sitting outside for 2 3 days, 72 hours or whatever it is, and I don't know, they might they make $700. Okay, you made $700, but guess what? You smell like fucking dog shit. You've been out there for 72 hours, and you basically made $9.72 a fucking hour by sitting there. You should just get a minimum wage job for $15 an hour
Yeah,
instead of
you could
sitting
go
out.
work at McDonald's and you'll make more. McDonald's raised the wages for starting employees at some locations. They're $18 an hour right now. That's well over minimum wage of fucking $15 an hour. You're good with that. And federal minimum wage didn't go up yet. I think it's still like $8 or some shit. But states like New
Still,
York,
I'd rather make
California.
$8 than smell and sit in a chair.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Fucking
Yeah. Shit your pants, piss your pants, sitting in the
get
chair.
trampled on. I can't even go to the bathroom. I got to take a fucking Poland spring bottle of peeing. Why would I
Yeah,
want?
that's
Why would I
lazy.
want to do that?